Hey, y'all. I hope you have ordered my new book by now, Getting to Zero, How to Work Through Conflict in Your High-Stakes Relationships. It's already getting dozens of 5-star reviews on Amazon. I've heard from a lot of you. Thank you for buying the book, buying it on Audible, buying it on Kindle. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate the support. I think this book is going to help a lot of people. It's all about how do we get back to a good place after some kind of disconnection or rupture or conflict. That's what the entire book is about. And if you want a roadmap on how to get back to a good place, what I call zero, please order my book. GettingToZeroBook.com. Get you some extra goodies, a conflict quiz, some additional PDFs, etc. And you can order it in all the places and support your local bookstores. Welcome to the show, Sachin Patel.
Thank you, Jayson. Super pumped and excited for our conversation today. It's always great to see you in person, but I'll take second best, which is seeing you on a call like this. Thanks for our time today.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for making the time. Really good to see you again and psyched to dive in. Before we start, when I saw you speak in Toronto recently, you mostly focused on the breath. And we'll focus a little bit of our interview on the breath today. And I thought it would be fun to start with, can you teach us briefly how to properly breathe so that we can practice it during the interview? And then we can check in at the end and see if people how long they actually hung with it.
Yeah, wonderful. I love that because a lot of times I get asked that question towards the end. Right. And I'm like, man, I wish somebody would ask me that in the beginning. So there's actually 3 gears to breathing. And there's many different ways to breathe depending on what we're trying to accomplish. For an interview like this, if somebody's listening in their car, if they're going for a walk or listening in their home, maybe doing the dishes, the way that we should breathe probably about 99% of the time is in through our nose and out through our nose with our tongue gently placed at the roof of our mouth. So the tip of our tongue should be just behind our front 2 teeth, and about 50% to 70% of our tongue should be at the roof of our mouth. What this does is a variety of things, and we'll maybe save that for a little bit later in the conversation. But if you just breathe like that, 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out, or if nothing else, simply slow down your breath. So if you don't want to get into counting, just slow down your breath, and that will have huge benefits on your nervous system, on your blood pressure, on your stress levels, on your clarity of thinking. So a lot of switches get activated when we slow down our breathing. The second gear of breathing, which is maybe if you're exerting yourself, if you're out for a walk, I would suggest that you're breathing in through your nose and then out through your mouth. In through your nose, out through your mouth. The third gear is if you're running from a lion or doing sprints or really trying to catch your breath after an intense bout of exercise, or you're sprinting or running, then you're breathing in and out through your mouth as fast as you can. And then you work your way down the gears. So if you're just doing a sprint in your exercise routine or just pushing yourself really hard on the bike, you're going to work your way down the gears and go to in through the nose, out through the mouth, and then eventually back to that 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out cadence in and out through the nose.
Okay, amazing. So as we're listening, let's be cognizant of where we're holding our tongue and also possibly our posture, which we could get into. But certainly let's go with this first gear, if depending on what you're doing, listeners. And I'm going to play with this myself as we chat. Okay, thanks for starting us off there. So a little bit about you. I read your bio earlier. How do you describe yourself now to people when they ask what you're up to?
Yeah, great question. And with a very not great answer, I suppose. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I still don't know what I call myself. So a few years ago, I just started calling myself my birth name, Sachin Patel, with no titles before and no letters after my name. And that allows me to be whoever I want to be. But if you had to put a label on me, then I'm traditionally trained as a chiropractor. Then I got trained in functional medicine. Then I became a practice success coach, which I still do. And then about 4 years ago, I was introduced to breath work. And since then, I've also become a breath work facilitator. Some might call me a thought leader in our space. Some might call me an author because I've published a couple of best-selling books. I'm also a podcaster. So there's a variety of things that I do. And all of them, I think, have the theme of helping people live their best life, whether it's structurally, whether it's biochemically, whether it's through their breath, whether it's through their mindset, whether it's through their environment, or whether it's through their food. I try to kind of look at health from a multifaceted approach and apply that. And that's kind of been the most consistent theme in my life, is how do I help people live a better, higher quality of life?
Amazing. Yeah. And you're also a husband and a father of a son. Is that right?
That's right. My son, Devin, is 13. He's a budding and extraordinary artist. And my wife, Deepa, actually works with me. She's a pharmacist turned functional medicine practitioner.
Awesome. I so enjoyed my time with her. I wish I would have gotten more when I hung out with you guys. Another time, perhaps. So, Sachin, describe how you got into health. I imagine either your childhood or somewhere in your teens or 20s that you might have had a health challenge. That's sort of the story I make up about health practitioners, is there was some dysfunction going on, some challenge, and they overcame it. So what, in short, what's the story of how you got into health and wellness?
Yeah, fortunately, I don't have a tragic health story and overcoming story, so to speak. And certainly I can find certain aspects of my health that I can connect back to health transformation. But I would say that my journey actually started in high school when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I had two options. I really loved working with my hands. In fact, in my high school, I won the woodworking award, which people may not know about me. And so I loved crafts. I loved building things. I loved, polishing and sanding and just perfecting things. So I thought about actually going into dentistry, because you get to work with your hands a lot and you're in tight, delicate spaces and you have to be really good. But I was also really good at computer science. And what I loved about computer science is you could tell this like $1 million piece of machinery what to do, and it would do exactly what you told it. And if you screwed it up, you would know within a moment. And if you got it right, you'd know instantaneously as well. And what was really cool about coding is that you were always rewarded for finding the fastest solution, right? So the fewer lines of code that you would write, the higher your score or your grade would be, because it would take up less machine power to come to the final solution. And that's how my brain worked. My brain kind of works to find the quickest solution without any fluff, without any unnecessary details. However, it always gets the job done. So that's the kind of way my brain works, and my hands work the same way. And so I was, very confused. Do I go into computer science or do I go into health? And so a buddy of mine introduced me to the idea of going into a designation where I could do both. So I did kinesiology in McMaster University, which is the physics and study and the mechanics of movement. And alongside with that, I also took computer science courses as well. And then when it came time to graduate from undergrad and go on to my graduate studies, I was choosing between dentistry and chiropractic, because chiropractic was an extension of the mechanics of movement. And, I didn't know much about chiropractic, to be honest, as much as I do now at the time. But I also realized that when I started getting dental catalogs from schools, that they only showed pictures of people's mouths. And of course, that makes sense. As a dentist, you're not going to work on the whole body, even though dentists do play a role on whole health, which we can also talk about too. The thing that really stuck out to me was, man, I could help people from head to toe with chiropractic. And it aligned with my philosophy of doing things naturally. My only experience seeing a chiropractor was actually going with my dad. And my dad used to work in a garment factory, and he had a repetitive strain injury, and he'd always, he'd go to see his chiropractor. And that was really the only thing that gave him relief. So I knew it helped my dad. So I got to witness that firsthand. I knew I would get to work with my hands, and I'd get to help people naturally from head to toe. So that's what attracted me to the whole chiropractic paradigm and philosophy.
So cool. I've had many positive experiences with chiropractics and, body work in general over the years. As an athlete, particularly a former athlete who got hurt a lot. You were my bread and butter, man. We worked with Olympians, baseball players, football players, marathon runners. And interestingly enough, like my audience at the time when I started out in practice was, the healthiest people in town. And a couple of years into practice, we landed on the news because of the great work our company was doing. And I was working for somebody at the time, and she refused the interview because she had frozen on live television before.
And so she said, Patel, you do it. I said, okay, like here I am, 26, like on TV, like that's awesome. Until people started calling in, scheduling appointments and coming in. The story they ran was about elbow pain, but almost nobody had elbow pain. Nobody had tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, which is what we were helping people with. They had all kinds of crazy health conditions that at the time I had no idea what to do with. And so here I am on top of the world, so I thought, and I can't even help the people that need help the most. But I also realized in those interactions that nobody could help those people because they'd already been to every doctor. They had seen, all kinds of different therapists and tried every medication under the sun, and nothing was working for them. And so right around that time, I somehow got on a mailing list, and another chiropractor in South Carolina, Dr. Grisanti, was sharing case studies of how he was helping all the people that I was turning down because I didn't have answers for. And that's what introduced me to functional medicine. And when I started learning about functional medicine, I became patient zero. And one of the first foundational principles is to cut out dairy and gluten because those tend to be very inflammatory and addictive foods. And so I did. And what I realized shortly after that is once I had given those foods up, that my consistent and persistent joint pain, which I had attributed to working out and being active and having a physical job, those disappeared. I went from being not a morning person to hating the morning because I'd always wake up stiff and achy to being a morning person. And now I'm the first person that wakes up in the house and I'm ready to go. I went from passing out on the couch after every meal to having all day energy. And you don't realize that you have these issues because you normalize them because that's how I grew up. I grew up stiff and achy. I grew up not being a morning person. I grew up passing out after my meals, and it wasn't a thing because that was just my thing, right? And that happened to a lot of people around me. So it's not until I got rid of those issues that my perception of what I thought was healthy changed. And then I started realizing, man, if I'm feeling this way, I wonder what would happen if my chiropractic patients started applying these principles. So I started giving them an intake form. And although they thought I was a 10 out of 10 chiropractor, what I realized was that I was not a 10 out of 10 health provider for them because I was missing all the other aspects of their health not related to structural care and never asking those questions because I didn't have an answer for them anyways. And as I started giving people these forms, I realized that, wow, these people have all kinds of health challenges that they're never going to bring to my attention. And clearly they're not resolved by any of their other practitioners because they still have them. And that's what clicked me into functional medicine. And since then, I've kind of evolved the way I look at health and, happy to dive into that as our conversation goes on.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. there's a few things I want to say there. First of all, it's such an easy lift in people's mood and health if they just kind of get some of the basics like sleep and exercise and diet, right? Maybe we can talk about that. But you mentioned too, like getting rid of gluten and dairy, which gluten was a huge one for me, huge mover. And dairy, I've reintroduced dairy since I was off it for like a decade or more and seemed to be doing fine with it. But I want to back up to chiropractics into functional medicine because there's something about, and I can talk about myself here as a reveal, where I would go to the chiropractor in my 20s because I was jumping off cliffs, skiing, and doing stupid stuff. And, I wasn't really in my body. If I was in my body, I wouldn't have done those things, right? I was just trying to get approval and attention and all the things and really hurting myself. And so I'd go to the chiropractor and I'd get temporary relief. And a good chiropractor would say, hey, I want you to do some of these exercises. And I would never do them. And so I was the patient who just wanted a quick fix. And I think a lot of people see chiropractics as that is, I just need to go get an adjustment. I'm in pain. My body's jacked. I need to go get a quick adjustment and then I'm better. And it seems like that is a lot of people. That seems to be so many people we go to the body worker or the doctor or the dentist or whoever and get the fix, but we don't want to do the work, right? And apply ourselves. And that's why functional medicine is so awesome and why I started seeing a functional medicine practitioner many years ago was because I started to get motivated, right? I wanted to your sort of tagline that the future doctor is the patient, which I love. I taking our care into our own hands is such an important thing, because the sort of sick care system that we live in doesn't encourage that. It's like, take this pill, do this thing, and you're better. So will you speak to, I guess, that maybe the victim in each one of us that doesn't want to do hard things that are good for us, right? Because like the compliance rate with medication, even in supplements, isn't great. People don't do what's good for them. Like, what's going on here? Why is this so hard for us?
Yeah. So Jim Rohn says that some will, some won't. And we can drive ourselves completely batty as to why some will, and even more crazy about why some won't. I believe it's a paradigm shift that needs to take place for people. And once that paradigm shifts, then it changes the questions we ask. So first paradigm to shift is about chiropractic itself. My philosophy of chiropractic used to be that people are going to come to me, I'm going to adjust them, mobilize them, and they're going to be on their way. And then I'm going to bill the insurance. The insurance is going to pay me for that chiropractic treatment. But what I learned over the years, and what I've applied since this shift took place for me, is that chiropractic is actually a lifestyle. It's not a procedure like it's perceived to be. It's a way of living. And so once we look at it as a way of living, then, because the first question that people ask me is like when I tell them about functional medicine, I thought you were a chiropractor. I said, I actually might do more chiropractic than the chiropractor who just adjusts their patients are doing, because I view it as a lifestyle. So it doesn't end when you leave my office, right? That's just the beginning when you leave my office, because the lighting in your home, your focus on sleep, your focus on nutrition, how you poop, like all of those things from A to Z are part of your lifestyle and fall within my domain. Because what chiropractic is about is not about treating a disease or an illness or curing anything. It's about activating our own inner healer and removing the things that interfere with that process. Now, sometimes what interferes with that process is structural, right? We could have a misalignment, or we could have a joint that isn't moving properly, and that's not allowing us to fully express our range of motion. It's disrupting proprioception. Proprioception is the fine signals that each little joint in your body sends to the brain, which is in fact the most important signal to the brain, is proprioception. It's like miracle grow for the brain. So if things aren't moving the way they're supposed to, our body is going to communicate that to the brain, so we actually do something about it. And so that's one part, right? And so there's actually like three parts to who we are. And from a health perspective, there's hardware, which, like, the easy example I can give you is your computer, right? So your computer has hardware, which is the monitor, the keyboard, the mouse, the camera, all of those things are hardware. Those are things we can see, touch, feel, and measure. And then we have software. So software is the less tangible, right? It's our mindset. It's our operating system. It's the cues that our nervous system is receiving from the environment. And that operating system and that software is actually very crucial, because if you go back to studying someone like Steve Jobs, one of the things that Steve Jobs said to me that really stuck out is that if you compare hardware from one company to another, so if I compare my iPhone to a Samsung phone, there might be incremental differences in the hardware, right? The cameras might be just like barely better than one another, right? The processors might be just a little bit faster than one another. But where you can get exponential gains and have exponential differences is in the software itself. It's in the operating system. Yeah. And this is why people will choose an iPhone, for example, and no matter how much you pay them, they'll never switch to anything else, because they're bought into a way, right? So an operating system is the way we do things. So I would say that we first have to change our paradigm and, look at the way our system is set up. So one thing I want to say is that if we just look at the words that are used in how our care is delivered, it completely changes our perception of things. So when you say, for example, they say, I'm treating diabetes, right? If a doctor were to say, I'm treating diabetes, the word treat is an interesting word, because you might treat your dog for a certain behavior. You might treat your child for getting an A+ on a test, but why would you ever treat someone for having a disease? You're actually nourishing the disease, right? You're allowing that disease to exist by actually treating it. How about the word cure? Right? Why would you ever want to cure anything? Why would you ever want to cure a disease? The word cure means to harden. Like concrete, it cures. So instead, we should look for solutions, right? Solutions are where issues dissolve away. And so a lot of times, if we start looking at just changing our paradigm and looking at the words that are used through a slightly different lens, we start realizing, oh my God, this system is set up for failure.
Right.
And if we look at the paradigm under which people operate, a lot of times it's prevention. So they're living a certain lifestyle to prevent a specific disease, but there's over 10,000 different diseases that we can diagnose somebody with. So how many different prevention strategies could somebody possibly have? Imagine you're going to go ski somewhere. Imagine you're going somewhere new. You put it into your GPS. You don't put all the places you don't want to go, hoping you end up where you want to be. You put exactly where you want to go. So our philosophy is that instead of having a health strategy that is based on prevention, how about we have a health strategy based on creation? Instead of what disease can I prevent eating this way, how about what life can I create living this way? And even small incremental changes can make a profound difference over the course of somebody's lifetime. You know, here's what's amazing, Jayson. It takes like 60 years to clog somebody's arteries. Think about that. 60 years of never learning how to eat, never learning how to think, never learning how to put yourself first, never learning how your body works. And it takes 60 years to destroy that body. Imagine what it would look like if you knew how to take care of yourself from the very beginning.
Yeah.
When you were 20, when you were 30, what kind of life could you create? What kind of legacy could you live and leave behind for others? So instead of, kind of hoping somebody's going to mop up our mess, it's way better, in my opinion, to work on creating the life that you actually want. And in every vision that somebody has of the life that they want, they're healthy, right? Nobody ever says, I want to have this, and this, and be sick. But that doesn't happen by accident, right? And what I do know is that whatever your goal is you will get there faster when you have a healthy body, a healthy mind, and a spirit that is inspired to take action because it has the capabilities intellectually and physically to accomplish whatever task you put in front of it.
Yeah. So it kind of starts with a mindset, and some of us don't have that. And what's one easy thing, or maybe not so easy thing, we can do to change our mind? You're sort of talking about this creation possibility. What kind of life and how do I want to feel? I imagine. Because you're right. A lot of people are on the defensive. I don't want to get sick. I don't want to get old. I don't want to get things. Mm-hmm. What can we do to change the mind? Because that seems like the biggest lever in the beginning is I've got to change how I am going about this whole thing.
Yeah, great question. So listening to podcasts like this, surrounding yourself with the right people, I think that's huge. I think just taking a moment and pausing and asking yourself, is what I'm doing in this moment moving me in the direction that I want to go in? And if not, how can I redirect? Just like when we're driving, right? Or just like when a pilot is flying, you know this, that 99% of the time, the flight is off course. And we're just making constant micro adjustments in order for us to move in the direction that we want to. Just like when you're driving, you don't just hold your hands straight, and even though the road appears straight, you're constantly making little micro adjustments. So I would say awareness is a really good step for us to start in. Another thing too is that we have to ask ourselves, who are we doing this for, right? Who better to be healthy for than yourself? Who better to be of full mental faculties for than yourself? And then of course, the people around you. So surrounding yourself with the right people, creating the right environment, having that minute to minute, moment to moment self-awareness, and really knowing what it is that we want. I think those are good starting points for people.
Yo. As you know, I've dedicated my life to helping people with their relationships, right? I want to solve this problem so that all of you can work through your differences and have fulfilling, amazing, badass partnerships and relationships, family, coworkers, friends, whoever. And I have trained a ton of relationship coaches, almost 100 certified relationship coaches, to help you specifically work through your relationship challenges. So I want to invite you to a special deal we're offering to the podcast listener where you can get 50% off your first month of coaching with one of our amazing relationship coaches. Okay, if you're tired of therapy, it feels like that's going around in a circle, or you want to actually set goals and accomplish your relationship goals, hire a relationship coach. Okay, go to relationshipschool.com/get coaching now, and then use the coupon code FIRST50 to get the 50% deal off your first month of relationship coaching. Super psyched to have our amazing coaches serve you and help you get to the next level. Okay, I want to come back to the breath just to check in everybody listening. Like, how are you doing with your breathing? Have you been tracking it at all? Did you go fall back asleep like I did for some of that? So let's come back to our 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out through the nose if we're in the gear 1. And you and I, when I saw you speak, you talked about how vital it is to breathe through the nose, and how, people are taping their mouths now is kind of a whole thing when they sleep, because we're starting to understand why nose breathing is so vital. And our son, I think I let you know, has been a mouth breather mostly because of allergies. And it's this self-perpetuating problem, right? It's like my nose is stuffed up, so I have to breathe through my mouth. But no, if you learned how to breathe through the nose, maybe you wouldn't be so stuffed up. Mm-hmm. It's kind of this ironic thing. Will you talk a little bit about why nose breathing is so important? If this is like one of those little things we could do to move our health forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me talk about the mouth first, and then we'll go work our way up to the nose. So the mouth is actually the dirtiest part of our body. So no matter how bad the air quality is that you're inhaling, breathing through your mouth will always make it worse, because now you're breathing in unfiltered air that is actually loaded with particulate of bacteria that's in your mouth. And that bacteria isn't necessarily a problem if it's in your mouth, but it becomes a problem if it ends up in your lungs. So when we breathe through our mouth, we inhale all this bacteria. We dry out the saliva in our mouth, which actually has protective properties that prevents cavities, that protects our gums, that protects our dental enamel, helps us digest our food much better. And when we breathe through our mouth, typically that means that our tongue is in the wrong position. For those of you that still have your tongue at the roof of your mouth, open your mouth and try breathing through it. It becomes almost impossible to do that. Your tongue actually seals your mouth when it's in that position. When we breathe through our mouth, we also tell our nervous system that we're in a state of fight or flight, because the only time you'd be breathing through your mouth, if you were breathing correctly, is if you're actually on the move. And the only time you'd be breathing exclusively in and out through your mouth, if you were, again, a correct breather, is you'd be breathing in and out through your mouth if you're under stress. When we breathe through our mouth, we actually don't pressurize the air either. And by not pressurizing the air adequately, that's why it's easier to breathe through our mouth, because A, it's a much bigger hole, and B, there's no pressurization of the air. The reason we feel resistance when we breathe through our nose compared to our mouth is because the air is actually going through this intricate series of structures called turbinades, and these turbinades cleanse the air and actually pressurize the air. So you actually get more oxygen into your lungs by breathing through your nose instead of breathing through your mouth. Now, why breathe through your nose? Well, it does the exact opposite of what we just talked about. When we breathe through our nose, it perfects the air. So whatever the outdoor air quality is, breathing in through your nose will actually cleanse it. It pressurizes the air, so we get 20% more oxygen. It moisture regulates the air. So now this air, if it's dry, it's not entering into our lungs, which can make us cough and make it difficult for our lungs to breathe correctly. It also removes particulate from the air. So we have cilia and we have hairs in our nose that actually filter out the air itself. And we also make something called nitric oxide that's made in the mouth through our oral bacteria. And that nitric oxide resides inside of our nasal membranes, and it actually kills viruses and bacteria on contact. So it's part of our initial immune defense system. When we breathe through our nose, we also recapture moisture. So people who breathe through their nose don't need to drink as much water as somebody who's breathing through their mouth. Another interesting fact is that when people breathe through their mouth, it actually requires more sugar for them to taste sweetness. So it actually changes the way food tastes because of how we breathe. So those are just some of the reasons why breathing through our nose can be extremely valuable. And for many people, believe it or not, it can actually be life-changing. I know it sounds so like simple and almost embarrassingly simple, but it can make a profound difference in somebody's health, literally in just a few days.
Yeah, you were saying at the talk you gave, you were saying it's probably the single biggest lever if you could only do one thing as a functional medicine practitioner for people is to just have them breathe differently, which I thought was really profound. I thought you were going to say like, well, exercise every day or eat this or don't eat that. And it was about the breath, which was so cool. Talk about snoring, because this is a relationship podcast. There's people listening that are with someone, partnered with someone who's a snorer. And they've tried all kinds of things. They've gone to the snoring clinic. What's something they can do differently here? Because it's a mouth breathing issue, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can still breathe through your nose and snore. So there's different types of airway obstructions that can be caused. A couple things to note about snoring. It's the number 3 cause of divorce. So definitely a relationship and a buzz killer if somebody snores.
Which is so interesting. I'm like, I need to see the stats on that because I've never seen that anywhere. So you were the first.
I didn't believe it either. But if you look it up, you'll see it is actually the number 3 cause of divorce. So definitely something that impacts our relationships. And here's the thing. I know some people will come up with the solution of sleeping in a different room, but that doesn't actually fix the problem. So your partner snoring in the other room, it's still going to impact their quality of life. It's going to impact how they show up the next morning. It's going to impact their cognitive function. Snoring's been tied to all kinds of different conditions, heart disease, respiratory illnesses, cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, dyslipidemias, even inflammatory conditions, and also blood sugar dysregulation. So we've heard countless stories and seen countless cases of people who wake up with high blood sugar, as an example, and they start our stop snoring protocol, or they tape their mouth and the snoring goes away. And guess what? Their blood sugar normalizes. So sometimes you may not connect breathing through your mouth and elevated blood sugar, but they're very closely connected to each other because of how it affects our nervous system. When people breathe at night and they have obstructive breathing, here's let me backtrack a little bit. So the upper limit of our metabolic health is how we breathe while we sleep. And so it's a bold claim, but I want to explain. So the most parasympathetic thing, which is the most healing thing that we do, is sleep, right? We can't go more than a few days without sleep. And we all know the implications. Even when the daylight savings time change occurs, that's when most accidents occur because people lose an hour of sleep. And so sleep is vital to our health and healing. Now, the thing that's also vital to our health and healing, which powers our mitochondria and is essentially the steering wheel of our nervous system, is our breath. So if you're supposed to be in the deepest and most powerful state of healing, but your breath is telling your nervous system to stay in fight or flight, and you're not properly oxygenating your body because you're breathing through your mouth, or in some cases, if people have apnea, hundreds of times a night, they actually stop breathing. So their body thinks they're dying while they're supposed to be healing, then that's going to have a significant impact on somebody's health. About 66% of people sleep with their mouth open at night. So it's oftentimes a low-hanging opportunity for people to improve their health by simply placing a piece of tape vertically on their mouth like this. And so you don't have to seal your mouth. I know there's companies like Hostage Tape and other companies that kind of seal your whole mouth. And that can work too, but it's not necessary because we're not trying to seal your mouth. When your tongue is correctly positioned, that'll happen automatically. We're just preventing your jaw from opening up while you're sleeping. So for those of you that are claustrophobic, you can still talk through your mouth. You can still breathe through your mouth if you wanted to. we're just preventing the mouth from being open and kind of, in a way, forcing the air to go in and out through the nose. Initially, it's going to feel weird. It's going to feel more resistive. But here's the thing. The more you use your nose, the more it opens up. When they put tracheotomies on people, so they put a tube into their throat because they can't breathe through their face for whatever reason, they might have cancer or other conditions, then what they find is over time, their nasal cavity essentially seals itself up. Because over time, they're not using that airway anymore. So the body just finds a way to seal it up. And like most things, if we don't use them, we lose them. So if you feel any restriction while you're breathing through your nose initially, just give it time. Maybe you work yourself up to mouth taping at night, 5 minutes during the day, then 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Maybe try wearing the tape while you're taking a nap so you get used to it. And then you can start working your way up to wearing it throughout the night. There's also chin guards. So instead of using the tape, if you don't want to, you can get a chin strap rather, and that keeps your chin in a closed, or your mouth or jaw in a closed position. So there are different ways. Essentially, the objective is to keep the mouth closed while you're sleeping. And then when you're snoring, the couple tips I want to offer in addition to that. So mouth taping is tip number 1. Tip number 2 is sleeping on your side. That generally prevents the airway from getting kinked. So if you're sleeping on your back and you've got a pillow, by bending your neck like this, you're kinking the airway, and that's going to result in restrictive breathing. And then the third thing that we recommend is a latex pillow. Latex pillows tend to be a lot more supportive. It's an all natural, renewable resource and material, and they'll last you forever. So those are great materials for a pillow. So those are some things. I have some more advanced tips in a guide that I'm happy to share with the audience, where we actually walk you through how to stop snoring in 7 days. There's a series of swallowing exercises you can do, mewing exercises, tongue exercises, and then there are certain compounds that you can actually put in your sinuses and ways to rinse out your sinuses to enhance your breathing as well.
What I love about this is it makes the patient the doctor, meaning if you're the one snoring or you have challenges breathing through your nose, it's kind of up to you. You got to get in the driver's seat here and try some different things, right? Whether it's the pillow or the taping, sleeping on your side. It's very empowering to think, oh, you mean I could actually change this? Mm-hmm. And so how long does one have to stick with some of these practices before they see a shift?
Yeah, so there's actually ways to measure it. We actually recommend an app called Snore Lab, and Snore Lab is a free app. There's a paid version as well. And you can actually record yourself while you're sleeping. And what this will do is it'll pick up the times when you're breathing and making noise, for example. It'll record your snoring, and then you can go back and listen to it. So you can measure that very objectively from night to night to night. And typically within days, people will notice a difference. I have people send me their reports, and within days, their snoring has significantly improved. And usually it's their spouse that's excited about it because they're the ones that are staying up at night. I used to snore, and I didn't realize how much I was snoring until I recorded myself, because eventually my wife falls asleep and she doesn't hear me snoring anymore. But when you record yourself, you're like, holy smokes, like I didn't realize that's how disrupted my breathing was at night. And so I started doing the very techniques that I share in the guide, and basically my snoring's down to 0 now. So it made a profound difference for me, even having a deviated septum. And, I'm a habitual nose breather, so I'm pretty good there. But, it was something that it wasn't enough for me to just tape my mouth at night. I actually had to do a few other things in order to get there. So tongue exercises, and then swallowing exercises. I can show you one that's really easy, and I'll walk you through it, and then you can try it yourself. So it's basically, you're going to put a nice big smile on your face like this. And you're going to place your tongue at the tip of your tongue towards the back of your front 2 teeth, and you're going to push gently. So gently pushing your teeth outwards with your tongue, smiling, and now try to swallow.
Harder.
Yeah. Now you're going to do the same thing, and you're going to look down and try that. And you notice it's more challenging. And you're going to look up and try that as well.
Yikes.
Yeah. So this is actually building up the musculature of the airway. So you have a muscular tube that helps you swallow food. And sometimes what happens, you have a trachea as well. And these airways, these muscles can collapse. And because of that, it can kink the airway. So by strengthening these muscles is going to prevent that from happening. So just like any muscle, if we don't use it, we lose it. This is a great exercise for people to do.
Yeah, I noticed some people, their tongue pushes their teeth forward instead of it being up, right? Which also can change even the way the face looks. So yeah, this exercise you're saying basically strengthens the habit of getting our tongue on the roof of our mouth and resting against the teeth, or?
Yep. So, I mean, mainly this is going to be to strengthen the airway. So it's more of the swallowing muscles that we're trying to build up, but we're placing our tongue in the correct position and activating certain muscles that help us do that. Got
it. Well, with a little bit of time left, we're going pretty deep with the breath. Maybe we can have you back sometime. We'll go deep with like diet or something else.
Absolutely. There's so much to talk about.
I know this, like taking care of ourselves and creating the life we want and how we want to feel is, it's going to take some effort. Give us, as we wind down here, just a couple more basic things the listener can do to change their health. So we've talked about breathing. What's maybe the next two things you might recommend for people if they're like, okay, I want to get healthier. I want to change the way I feel. I want to change my trajectory here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really big on passive therapies. So breathing, initially it's an active thought process, right? To bring awareness to the 23,000 breaths that you take and the 30 pounds of air that you consume per day. So first we start with breath. And, I tell people, listen, I can prove to you how important breathing is in 5 minutes. Just stop doing it. Okay. And you'll know how important your breath is at about 30 to 45 seconds in. And you're like, I want nothing more than to just breathe right now. So breath is one of the first stepping stones. The second one is actually lighting. So this is one that often gets overlooked and doesn't get the attention that I feel it deserves. And it probably will in the next couple of years. I know authors right now that are writing books about it. And lighting, it can be a tool for healing, or it can be a weapon that steals your health. And whether it's intentional or not, but certain types of lighting can actually be very toxic, and not just toxic to, our health, but, toxic to our circadian rhythm and toxic to our biology. And so here's why. So if you think about this huge ball of light in the sky, it starts off at the horizon and makes its way up overhead, and then comes around to the other side of the world and it sets. And during that period of time, the color of that ball of light in the sky is changing. It's starting off as a red, orange, then going to a yellow, then going to a full spectrum, and then going back to yellow, and then orange, and then red again. And the positioning of the sun and the color wavelengths of light that we see actually change the hormones that our body releases. The positioning of lighting indoors never changes. So in our brain, it's the same time of day all day. The color temperature of the bulbs never change. So in our brain, the message that it's receiving is that we're stuck at like 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And that's our biology. We can't do anything about that. You could wear 5 watches that tell you it's 10 o'clock at night. But if your lighting is telling your biology that it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, guess what wins? The lighting wins every time. Okay. So we're victims of that if we don't do something about it. So our philosophy in our home is once the sun goes down, no overhead lighting, and we turn on specific red bulbs that are at a frequency or wavelength rather, that decrease cortisol and increase melatonin. So in nature, you would never have high cortisol and high melatonin. You would have low cortisol and you would then elevate melatonin levels. So the lighting in our current world is very disruptive to our circadian rhythm. So our hormones get completely disrupted, and then therefore our sleep gets completely disrupted as well. So one big thing that people can do is turn off overhead lighting after the sun goes down, get red bulbs in their home, that light from the ground up. Ideally, just like a fire comes from the ground up. It hits the top of our retina, telling our brain that it's time to start winding down. It's time to start making melatonin. Melatonin, we think of as a sleep hormone, but it's actually our most important immune modulating hormone. So if we don't get our lighting right, then our immune system is in tatters as well. And that disrupts our sleep. It disrupts our healing. It disrupts all the things that we're trying to do when we're trying to get a good night's rest. So number 2 is lighting. And when you change the bulbs in your home and you set new policies in your house, then it becomes really easy. And these are passive therapies, right? The whole family benefits when you do something like this. And then number 3, I would say sleep. Focusing and kind of centering your health strategy around having good sleep is huge. And it's all connected, right? So how we breathe while we sleep is important. The lighting that kind of sets the stage for a good night's rest, it doesn't just happen at night before bedtime. It actually happens first thing in the morning. So getting natural sunlight for 10 to 30 minutes. If it's cloudy, it's 30 minutes. If it's nice and bright, 10 minutes is usually enough. This tells our brain what time of day it is, and it sets the stage for our hormones to be released. So it's not unusual, Jayson, for someone to work with us and see results within days instead of taking weeks or months, because what we help people do is roll the boulder down the hill. Most people think health is complicated and challenging, but nothing I shared today was complicated or challenging. Right. It's just working with your biology, swimming with the river instead of swimming up the river, which is what most people do.
Mm-hmm. So good. Awesome. Well, this has been really a treat, Sachin, and I appreciate all the wisdom here. I know we're just kind of getting warmed up. You're obviously a wealth of knowledge. Couple more questions, and then we'll close. We always ask our guests, because one of our missions here at the Relationship School is to reach young people with more relationship education, better tools to work through intimate relationships, friendships, etc. So if I was standing next to you in front of 1,000 high school students, and you had the mic and you could share with them one thing about relationships specifically, what would you share with them?
Yeah, I would say, well, the most important relationship is the one we have with ourselves. And secondly, I would say that communication is where most relationships flourish or break down. And one of the tools that I would encourage people to look at, maybe this is something you discuss as well, is learning their love language and learning their communication style and learning that of the other people around them that they deeply care about. So for my teams, we know everyone's love language and we know everyone's DISC personality. DISC helps us understand the right words to use, the right things to emphasize, the right amount of information to give somebody so that we can get our message across. You know, I would say most relationships, most wars, most challenges are caused not by bad people, but by poor communication. So communication would be a big one.
Yeah, so good. Yes, we do talk a lot about that here. Okay, and then final words. What are your parting words you want to share with our listeners?
Wow, so much to share. I would say that, you know, you are in control. You are the master of your destiny. And it's super vital, especially right now, that we take the best care of ourselves that we can, because what the world needs more than ever before is us showing up as our best version of ourselves. It starts by being healthy, whole, and happy. And when we can do that for ourselves, it's only then can we pour that energy and light into others, especially our children, to the people that we love and care about. And there's nothing more important that you can do, you know, for yourself than take care of you. And there's nothing more important for you that I can do than take care of myself. So, you know, with that being said, you know, you are the doctor of the future. We live in an era where this is our time to rise and shine. And we have the tools, the capabilities, knowledge, podcasts like this, and so many others where people are really looking out for our best interests. And we've got to be interested in our own, you know, kind of self-actualization. And there's so many paths to get there. Find the one that aligns with your values, because sadly, no one's coming to save you. You know, and what breaks my heart is when people turn 60 and they have cancer, and then we're trying to teach them how to eat healthy. They should have known that all along, right? And whose responsibility is that? I don't know. But certainly I know people like you and me are trying to change that so that people can be self-empowered. And thank you again for this opportunity to have this conversation. And like you said, we're literally scratching the surface of the surface. And I look forward to perhaps future conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Sachin, where can people find you?
A couple places. One, certainly Facebook is where I write most of my original content. And I've also created a free tool called 30 and 30. So if you go to 30in30.org, it's 30 ways to stay out of my office. And I've also got a great breathwork tools, a set of tools that I'm going to offer. If you go to Breathwork with Sachin, you can get some keynotes. You can see the keynote that I did that Jayson had the honor to see. And you can also get some experiential breathwork tools that I've created for you as well.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, everybody, check in one last time with your breathing. How'd you do? Thanks again, Sachin, for all your wisdom, and really, really valuable. Appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend. What an honor.
If you are with an emotionally unavailable partner, or have been, and you haven't quite got the lesson yet about you, and you want to look in the mirror and you want to dig deep, because that's what we do here at the Relationship School, we have reworked one of our courses into a group coaching experience. It's called End the Struggle with Him, Roadmap and Monthly Group Coaching Membership. And it's super affordable, $49 a month. And we would love you to come check it out. If you still continue to attract emotionally unavailable partners, if you're like, what is this about me? It's loaded with value. There's live group coaching. There's several courses in there. It's worth well over $3,000, this experience. And even in there is the letter, commentary on the letter my wife wrote to me after our second breakup that ultimately had me put 2 feet into the relationship. So this is super cool, and I want you to come check it out. Okay. relationshipschool.com/ESH roadmap. ESH roadmap. And I look forward to seeing you in there.